maybe it was Alwyn Nikolai. I'm trying to remember who was there. They had a dance studio. So then I met the Aerodance team and Branya and Stephanie Evanitsky, the director, who had their dancers in the air with what they call multi-gravitational aerodance, which was the first time a real troupe had gotten together to do it outside of, let's say, the circus and trapeze as a boutique dance concert.
And this was all on bungee cords?
They had a large scaffolding, they had lines down, they had harnesses, they had nets, they had various things, but they developed movement. Curiously, Stephanie Evanitsky had been a classical Russian-style ballet dancer who decided to get off her toes, as she put it, and go flying, every ballerina's dream. And so then she created this company, and I was at the time working on my live electronics and my other things that I was doing in the electronic music studio. And so I somehow ended up to be the musician for the group. Suddenly I was on tour with them and making up things of my own at the time. And so one day at the city center, we had a 3-week run of 4 days a week, whatever the slot was, and our studio was within walking distance, so it was a lot easier than dragging ourselves around touring, which I did for a couple of years with them. But in the door came early with his entourage, Salvador Dali and his wife Gala, and maybe a driver or one of his colleagues or somebody. And he was, sat down in the front row with his big hat on and his cane, and I didn't recognize him, but finally because I was busy setting up because I was a live performer, and so then in the flutter of the end of our set, somebody said, "Go over and talk to him. That's that guy Dali." And I said, I was a rube from New Mexico. What do I know? They all look like cowboys to me, with those big hat and all this. And because I could speak some Spanish, I went up and say, "Hola, señor Dali, tu nombre Dali, ¿qué quiere decir eso? Eso es un nombre muy extraño, ¿no? Oh, sí, sí, sí." And so I started talking to him enough so that, "Hey, what are you, blah, blah, blah." And so he would come to our concerts, because then he asked, through me, his interpreter. He actually switched to French, but because he didn't like Castilian. He was Catalan, Barcelonan. But anyway, he asked me at one point, could he join the company and we would rig him up so he could fly. And we said, well, that's, because he thought, why not him too up there? Of course, he was about 75 years old. He was living at the St. Regis Hotel in the wintertime when he had his studio there for the month or 3. And so we realized that, well, maybe he's not physically fit to go get twisted around on ropes up there. So we said, well, we'll do a little event with you at your studio, which happened to be the St. Regis Hotel on 5th Avenue, in the lobby, all marble and mahogany and wrought iron and flowers, and this beautiful little micro elegant palace where he had a whole side of the building is his painting studio. Um, and we hung Branya on the staircase or the chandelier, and she danced around him. And that's the photo I took of Dali with the great dancer Branya, who was all twisted, and he's, posing and all of that. And he turned around, and somebody made a film of that. One of his people had a little film camera because he was followed by people all the time. Well, we never got him off the ground because we didn't want to break his hip. And so then we would have, I would go up there and see him now and again after the before and after this event and we would have breakfast with him at 6 p.m. when he just got up, came down to his the public dining area where he had a giant table, and people would come to see him then. And 6 to 7 o'clock, he had worked all night, slept all day, and he would say, "Oh, New York is a great city because I can make so much money while I'm asleep," being that he would work all sketching and finally just signing his name and selling pieces of paper with it. And his gallerist would come and get it in the morning. And by the evening, when Dali woke up, he would have sold thousands of dollars worth of his, fresh stuff. And so I went with Paco and with Jeff Hewitt to see him once. I don't know, I think maybe even Christine Lehner came also once. But I would say, let's go up and have breakfast with Salvador Dali. And oh, well. So Shari came once, and she had met him before. She said, "Oh, that kind of a clown of a Spaniard," as I think is what she called her, because I said this. She told the story of his working on the window, Bonwood Teller or whatever, the Fifth Avenue Mall started window displays for the season, and supposedly he had a commission to set up a tableau with fur, and then he said, "Well, I'll line the bathtub with fur, and I'll get in it and I'll pretend to take a bath in a fur bathtub. How's that for a night?" "Oh, okay, go right ahead." They let him the furs, and whatever happened, he also managed somehow to, I don't know if he had much water, but he actually did take a bath, supposedly, with water in the bath on the fur. And then the commotion on the avenue was how high when whatever happened, he was getting out of the bathtub. The whole thing fell over, broke the window out onto the street. The police came. The store had to pick up their furs and clean up the sidewalk and kick him out.
Well, this would have, you see, he's
Whatever year, if it ever
it
happened.
was in the 50s because his signature is in the Black Visitor Book.
Well, he was a gadabout town, and
Yeah.
and so I mean, this story, I have not ever had the time to tell more about just this particular curious mind that. So he was like a grandfather, and I was 22 or 3, and
In 75, you would have been 24.
yeah, I would have turned that year. But he was right in those years. By 77, the year in opened, and he was already gone. Well, he was still alive, I think, but he never came back to New York. What he did, he would come over after New Year, and he'd stay till maybe April, and he'd do all this work and had a gallery and selling stuff, and then he'd spend the time summer at his house in Port Ligat. He invited me to come there, said, "Come stay with me," But above all, he went on with Shari. He knew Shari, and so Shari, "Comme bien, nous visitons un petit déjeuner plus." Plus de bonne heure. So he came for lunch or breakfast at about 2 p.m. down to the inn with a limousine waiting outside. And the guys in the bar gawking, "What's that limousine doing here?" And Shari served him a little cerveau d'agneau au beurre noir avec capre. So grazed lamb brains in burnt butter with capers, garlic and a local dish, I think, from Catalonia, because his fishing port town. I don't know where, but I remember Dali said, "Oh, if I eat these brains, will it make me more intelligent?" Something like that.
Do you know if he liked it?
No, he ate it up. I mean, I mean,
It was a local
it's
dish?
called in, it has a fancy name in French, but in other places called the leftovers or the sweetmeats. That's what the polite butchery, they'll call it sweetmeat and glands and, liver and all that kind of stuff. Aren't you getting hungry now? But anyway, there I was sitting at the lunch table with Shari Deans and Salvador Dali, and, say, hey, well, we'll get that. You never know who you'll meet around that table. Later became the poker table, or it was at the same time. He at the time when we go up and we didn't go work in the stew. We'd always meet him at his lounge where he'd be having an omelet and coffee at 6 p.m. And Gala, and he was always talking and deeply involved with his wife, who was sort of a great lioness of a woman. She sort of had him enthralled, and he would always introduce her and say, "Oh, this is." So Gala, in the history of his life, was this great inspiration, uh, and she was not very friendly to all the footlings and wannabes that came to see him. He would invite people to have breakfast, but she had just gotten up or was just back from shopping probably. But he was working at the time on painting lima beans or fava beans with little microscopic portraits. This is what he told me. I never actually saw them because he was doing this somewhere else. But he was telling me about it. Said, it's fantastic when you paint, then you can really look. He used a kind of a jeweler's eye, mirror, lens to do it very delicately. And of course, he was a master technician of painting. So he did ones of Marilyn Monroe and Charlie Chaplin and I don't know who else. He was doing a whole series of them. But the reason is that he had a filmmaker who had a time lapse camera and a mountain, and then he would film the beans, put them in water, and then over a week he would film the beans sprouting through the face of the celebrity. And I said, well, that's a fantastic, gigantic movie out of something very, very small. And I don't know if it's ever been shown or whether he finished it or just imagined doing it. But anyway, and he said, Richard, faut faire un peu de musique pour le grand explosion des faces, or whatever it was in French. My memory is maybe in the wrong language. But so that's where I wrote my orchestral piece on a toothpick for Dali. I think in the catalog it's called For Dali. And it's on a wooden toothpick.
A flat toothpick.
No, a round toothpick. No, you have to be stylish about these things because then the score is verbal and written in micro. I had to have again a jeweler's lens to do the microscopic writing, and the instructions of the orchestra is all ascend in slow, all ascend range in slow pulse. 6 words. And it's every member of the orchestra or ensemble starts on their lowest note, and then the conductor with the toothpick conducts the pulse. Da, 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 to that point, however big the orchestra is or the instrumentation. The kettle drums run out after 4 pulses. The tuba has 20 notes. And so the whole thing starts, and then it becomes a race. So who can play the longest with the highest range? Usually won by the French horns. Meanwhile, the rest of the orchestra members are sort of, hey, my part's already done. What? That's no fair. And so watching the flutes, and the violins. So it's a novelty piece, as they politely called it, when it was performed around a few places.
What?
I have a recording of it with an orchestra.
Who was conducting?
This was some festival upstate. I'd have to dig in the art. It's in Charlie Morrow's archive. This was a long time ago. You understand this.
Did
But
Dali
I gave it. I
did
gave it
Dali
to.
ever hear it?
No, we didn't have it performed. I didn't have it recorded for a number of years until later. But I did send copies to Michael Tilson Thomas, who used to come into the ear bar, and I gave one to Seiji Ozawa. You know, I was kind of mad for this piece to get played. Here, have my score. Just like every other hustling young composer, you got to give them a copy. And some of them probably used it on their teeth, but I never got a major orchestra to do it. Though again, it's been performed some places in Europe via my various nefarious friends who stage concerts and don't tell me what they're doing sometimes.
When
I
you
don't know.
went to visit Dali's house, did they have the toothpick score?
Oh, I don't know that. I think he used it on his teeth like any sensible artist would.